Hello everyone, my name is Karen Leah C. Cortez from BSN1-A, and for today I will be discussing about illness behaviors and the 5 stages of illness. But before we proceed, let us first read the learning objectives. At the end of the discussion, you will be able to define illness behavior, identify Parsons' 4 aspects of the sick role, identify the 5 stages of illness, and lastly, describe the effects of illness to the roles and functions of the client and family members. Now let us start with the discussion. What is an illness behavior? It is an individual's way to respond to their own health status and a coping mechanism that involves ways people describe, monitor, and interpret their symptoms. It is the belief that one is threatened by illness and requires protective action, including medical care, and is usually triggered by changes in somatic experience and physical function that are interpreted as symptoms of an underlying threat to one's health. And they can either take remedial actions or to seek healthcare right away. Now, their behaviors when ill are individualized and are affected by factors like age, sexuality, occupation, socioeconomic status, religion, ethnic origin, psychological stability, personality, education, and also modes of coping. Talcott Parsons' 4 aspects of the sick role. Now, this method of explaining the specific rights and responsibilities of those who are sick, because those diagnosed with a medical condition cannot always perform the same duties as those in good health. So society adapts to this situation and allows for a reasonable amount of deviation from behavior that would be considered typical of a well person. Let us first read rights. So the first one is, the client is not held responsible for their condition. Now, even though the illness was partially caused by the client, it is beyond their control and is not curable by simply having willpower or motivation. The client is not capable of reversing their condition by themselves and should be taken care of until they can resume to their responsibilities and normal social role. The second one is, the client is excused from certain normal social roles and tasks. They are not expected to do their work or other responsibilities, obviously because they are sick, and the greater the illness, the greater is the exemption. Now for the obligations, the first one is, the client is obligated to get well quickly as possible. The client is expected to see being sick as undesirable and should follow legitimate advice and restrictions that could help with their recovery. And the second one is, the client is obliged to seek competent help. Now, after a certain period of time, the client should contact a doctor or a primary care provider and cooperate with their advice to get better, rather than relying on their own ideas on how to recover. Edward A. Suchman's 5 stages of illness. Now, these are stages that an ill client has to go through from being sick until recovery. It is also known that not all progress through each stage. An example is when a client experiences a heart attack and proceeds through stage 3 and 4. And some don't even have to go through the whole process and has only gone through the first 2 stages. It varies mostly on the situation of the client. So let's go to stage 1. Stage 1, symptoms experience. Something is wrong and the individual is aware of it. A person usually recognizes a physical sensation or a functional limitation, but does not suspect a specific diagnosis. At this stage, the client is believing that something is wrong. Either someone mentions that they are unwell, or the client experiences symptoms such as pain, rashes, cough, fever, or bleeding. In stage 1 has 3 aspects, which is the physical experience of symptoms, the cognitive aspect, which is the interpretation of the symptoms in terms that has meaning to the person, and the emotional response. Example is fear, confusion, and etc. This is also where the client consults about their symptoms and feelings, proving that what they are feeling is real, and they can try to do home remedies. But if it does not work, they enter through the next stage. Stage 2, assumption of the sick role. Clients take on the sick role if symptoms persist and worsen. Now, at this point, illness becomes a social phenomenon, and sick people seek confirmation from their families and social groups that they are indeed ill and should be excused from normal duties and role expectations. Now, the person now accepts the role of the sick person in this stage and seeks confirmation from family and friends. People frequently continue to self-medicate and postpone contact with healthcare professionals for as long as possible. They are also excused from their regular duties and also role expectations during this stage. This depends on how serious the illness. Emotional reactions such as withdrawal, anxiety, fear, and depression are quite common. When the person's symptoms persist or worsen, they are motivated to seek professional assistance. Stage 3, medical care contact. If symptoms persist despite home remedies, become severe, or necessitate emergency care, the person is motivated to seek professional health services. People who are sick seeks advice in their own volition or from being persuaded by their loved ones. When they seek professional help, they're actually asking for these 3 information, which is validation of real illness, explanation of symptoms in an understandable terms, and reassurance that they'll be alright or prediction of what the outcome will be. At this point, the client seeks expert recognition of the illness as well as treatment. The health professional may either determine that they are not sick or the illness is a life-threatening one. The client has the choice to believe the diagnosis, and if they did, the client follows the prescribed treatment plan. But if they don't believe the diagnosis, they seek help from other professionals whose diagnosis fits their perception. Stage 4, dependent client role. For symptom relief, the client relies on medical professionals. The client accepts care, sympathy, and protection from life's demands and stresses. A client can play the dependent role in a healthcare facility or at home or in the community. And the client must also adjust to the disruption of a daily schedule. Now, in this stage, most accept their reliance on the primary care provider, but only with some degree of their own lives. Some people, for example, request specific information about their disease, treatment, and cost of treatment, and may even postpone their decision to accept the treatment until they have all of these informations. Now, others would rather proceed with treatment without seeking information. The illness may satisfy some clients' unsatisfied dependence needs. Now, others have low dependency needs and strive to regain their independence. And some people may even attempt to maintain their independence at the expense of their recovery, meaning not everyone would want to stay in a dependent state. In the end, it really depends on the person. And lastly, stage 5, or the recovery or rehabilitation stage. This is the stage where the client is expected to give up their dependent role and go back to their normal roles and responsibilities, but depends on the state of their illness. It could be acute, critical, or permanent. Now, this stage can appear unexpectedly, such as when the symptoms first appear. For people with acute illness, they recover much quicker, making it easier for them to go back with their daily lives. And for those who have critical illness, it is harder for them to recover and needs to adjust their lifestyle to fit their needs. But people with permanent disability, on the other hand, they have to go through therapy in order to make major adjustments to function or do things properly. And that is the end of our discussion. These are the references, and I would like to say thank you for everyone for listening, and that will be all.